All right. So, and I do these rolling starts. I don't do introductions anymore, but I'll do a different one for this one here. And look what I have here.
The hair book. The hair book.
The hair book.
Yeah.
Then you
Okay.
had gorgeous hair.
Well,
I
it was the 70s. What can I say?
yeah.
Now I've got a perfectly round scalp that looks good bald. So it's all good.
I'm lucky so far at 52 that I still have a fair bit of my hair. And I've
Eh,
read somewhere that apparently if after I think 30 or something or 35 you still have most of your hair, that there's a good chance you'll have it for the rest of your life. I'm not quite sure how that goes. But I
well,
mean,
I'm looking at your hairline, and what I am not seeing is I'm not seeing it recede.
yeah,
Mine
it's
thinned
reasonably
out
okay.
and receded and so forth. And I look at that and I go, no, I got a feeling you're gonna have hair. So
We'll see. We'll see.
that's true. That's true.
Well, that kind of brings us immediately into the topic. So for the folks listening, Dan Anderson, Super Dan, I have his book here, American Freestyle Karate, a guide to sparring. Which, if I'm not mistaken, how many years has it been in print? 40 years.
Yeah, it actually came out, I believe, in 1980, and there's a funny story behind that. Is that way back in 1974, I had the guts of it written, I had the concept of it written, and I contacted Tuttle Publishing. Tuttle was like the big martial arts publishers at that time, and they were interested. So now it's time to shoot the photos. Now, being a rather poor boy at the time, I went inexpensive on the photos. So I didn't have like professional backdrop. We just did it in the dojo. And the dojo had this almost kitchen squares type of design to it. And so I do the photos, I send them the photos, and they go, nah, I don't think so. You got to redo the photos. And I'm kind of going, oh man. So I stall, and then they send me a letter. Well, we're no longer interested in like that. It's like, oh, that was really stupid. Now we fast forward to 1979. I'm at a tournament in either San Jose or San Francisco, somewhere around there. And I'm talking with the editor of Inside Kung Fu. His name was Paul Maslach. And I'm recounting this tale of, possibly going through Tuttle, but then it fell through. And we're just talking. And he looks at me and goes, Dan, if you write it, I'll publish it. And I said, really? He goes, yes. So 9 months, I actually hand wrote the book, and I was working at a print shop, a corporate print shop at that time. I would take the handwritten notes over to the steno pool where Kathy would type them out, typewriter, 3 cents a page. Any corrections was that the correct type or white out. In 9 months, I had the book ready to go. I sent them I sent them the manuscript, and then one of the things that I hated about martial arts books at that time was that you would have one or two or three photos. So the guy grabbed you. Now you're in the wrist lock. How did you get there? Where were the intervening photos? Where was this step by step? And I didn't want my book to be like that. So I actually had a notebook, and let's say, okay, back fist, rear hand punch with a number 5 behind it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I had the entire book coded that way, step by step, all the photos, how many photos were needed for each sequence. And Ed Ikuda, who was the photographer at the time, he said, I've never seen anybody so organized on their photos. We took 1,200 photos in one day.
Yeah.
They only used about 750 of them. And probably about 6 months or thereabouts after that, the actual book came out. Now, why did I write this book? Because it was the book that I wanted to read. Nobody else wrote a book on free sparring. Nobody else wrote the nuts and bolts. Chuck Norris had one. He had a basic primer. Well, you got the hand up here and you got this here. But the rest were either historical books or self-defense books or specialty books. We got judo, we got silat, we got this or that, but nothing on free fighting. And so I ended up writing the book that I wanted to read. and it really took off. I was amazed how well it took off from there. I mean, it really took off. I was getting notifications from people. This is required reading in my school. The brown belts need to read it. This is a black belt book they need to read. And it's like, wow. So I scored big on it, and I'm still very pleased with it. I did an update, a 40-year and reunion, not reunion, but revision.
Yeah.
Where the fact I was so jazzed about the book coming out, I didn't notice certain things. There were captions that were miscaptioned. The biggest glaring error was I had a section on timing, and I think you and Lauren wrote a book on timing.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I had a section on timing that was supposed to go in the offensive approaches section. Well, the editor had it way back on page 213 on added concepts and information. It was like, no. When are you supposed to attack? What are the triggers? Why are you doing it? This goes right here. But I didn't catch it in time. So there's a lot of things that I fixed, including the impossibly small font to read. and then the pictures being laid out in Japanese manual style. So picture 1, 2, 3 instead of American 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I fixed all that stuff, and then I updated certain things. And so I have a 40th anniversary revision that I'm equally as proud of. But yeah, that first one really opened the door for me in terms of writing stuff.
But what I really liked about it is that, I mean, aside from the fact that, like you mentioned, you've got all these pictures in there, which is something that, like you mentioned before, same problem is you get 2-3 pictures and like, oh, how the hell did you get there? That just makes no sense. And as I get older, I have more difficulty with that. Like right now, I'm in a private group of a bunch of instructors, and we talk, and I'm like, guys, I need video. I just don't see it from the text, because after writing for so long and writing, manuals, instructional books for martial arts and self-defense, and doing so many videos, I'm constantly thinking, okay, how do I explain this? How I show this? Which angle? Blah, blah, blah. I'm guessing it's the same for you. That when somebody isn't organized, I just don't know. Okay, this could mean like 5, 6, 7 different things to me. Like, is it like this, that?
Not only that, but their terminology.
Yeah.
If it's any different than your own personal terminology or an agreed upon terminology, then okay, well, do they go to the left? Do they go to the right? Are they using Japanese terms? Are they going Migi? Are they going Hidari? It's just guys. Just put a little video there or enough pictures where I can see this and go, oh, that's what you mean. Yeah.
And that's what I liked is the pictures, but also you have like drawings in there that explain the body mechanics, and which again back in the day was not common.
No,
it's like if you look at the old books, like from what is it, Dempsey's book on boxing. Is it it's not championship fighting. I forget what it was.
No, I think it is championship.
Is it championship fighting? Yeah. I mean, it's a great book, but there's a lot more that obviously he knew that he might have explained it better if we fast forward 50, 60 years and we see that instructional manuals are written differently today than they were back then. And again, not having a go at Dempsey, obviously not. I mean, mad respect for everything that he was able to do, because a lot of people don't know just what he was able to do outside of the ring as well. But I digress. But just writing a very clear instructional book is very, very difficult. It's not easy.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that I also got kudos for, which I didn't, it wasn't planned, okay, but I wrote the way that I spoke. So if you're reading the book, and now we've just met, so you're getting an idea of what my voice is like. You could be reading that, and there's my voice, and I'm not getting scientific. I'm not getting overcomplicated. It's just, keep your hands up. Oh, okay. Use the same side as the hand here. Bing, bang, and like that. And it's funny that you should mention the drawings, because Lauren, who any of you guys watching, Lauren Christensen, my first instructor. They know each other quite well and so forth. But one of the things that Lauren would be able to tell you is that every class he might be teaching something and all of a sudden, zip, I was off to the side. I had a notepad.
Yeah.
I was a very amateur cartoonist and I would draw the moves out. Then I'd hustle back on the floor. And in fact, I just came across like 50 pages of notes and drawings and this and that from 50 years ago. This will be like an upcoming book on my roots, but that's where that came from in, American Freestyle Karate, because sometimes an illustration will work better because you can place the lines just exactly how you want.
Yeah.
And if your body's not doing it, okay, the drawing will. So
Yeah. One of my instructors, the late Bob Orlando, he would give handouts in his seminars, and he'd do stick figures. But they were clear. It made sense. It was very clear. Like, okay, that arm is here. This arm is in front, not behind, and so on. So all the little details that, as a student, you're always looking for. Like, how the hell did he do that? How did he make that work? And you're trying it, and you're not making it work. Like you see, like the wrist lock, or how the hell did your hand get there? You need all these steps, and in a well-written book, it's always a pleasure to read that and figure, and you can start training and figure it out. But I've read books where it's not the case, and then it's just
unfortunately,
it's an exercise in frustration. Then,
yeah.
But you've written a lot. I mean, you've written a lot, made a lot of instructional videos as well. Was it the success of the first book that got you started? Because it's not easy. I mean, not everybody has more than one book in them.
Sort of, kind of. One of the things that I found was that it was easy to write. It was easy to verbally explain myself. And so if that book, I put a pen in my hand, blah, 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 blah. The second karate book, which didn't get published for another 20 some years because the guy I was involved with that time, I found out, was doing some unethical things. And we got as far as shooting the photos. And I went, nah, I can't do it with this guy. And I set that off to the side. Of all things, my 9th grade typing class. And so I'm familiar with the keyboard. I'm not awesome at a keyboard, but I'm familiar with it. I am such a nerd that I love precision instruction. I want to know if we're stepping 45 degrees, if we're stepping 47 degrees. And then one of the things, there's 2 points of research that I've engaged in for, all my martial arts life. And one of them is how things work. How things work. One of my absolute favorite books is one that I call Shintai Kyosei Jutsu, and it has to do with opponent body manipulation. And brilliant research project, fun, great, answered my questions. But the second research project is, okay, how do I convey this so that anybody on the other end doesn't interpret, they duplicate what I'm trying to say. And this is where, okay, let me give you one that happened last week. And it's still an ongoing research project. Okay, in my RNS class, my guys block too far from the body. And, the stick is too far from the body. So I come up with various things. I tell them, what is so precious about the air that you feel the need to defend it? Sometimes that gets across. I say, okay, you violated the Godfather rule. What's the Godfather rule? In The Godfather 2, Michael Corleone is telling Frankie Pantangelis, they're in his father's old office. I learned many things from my father in this office. And one of them was to keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So I'm trying to get them to block closer. It's not working. So finally I'm going, well, and I'm working with this one student. I go, well, okay, do something for me. Okay. block my stick. And he goes, bang, he's way out here. Says, okay, put up a shield. Zip, and he's close, and I'm going, yes. For some reason, block has this underlying tone of going forth and stopping, while shield, man, you're covering. So I told all my students in my harness class, okay, you guys have free reign to interrupt me if you ever hear me use the word block. You stop me right away and you remind me that we're shielding. And so that's an example of that aspect of research in terms of, okay, how can I communicate what I know to somebody else so that they get it? I don't want them interpreting a doggone thing until they're good at it. Then they can go ahead and do innovations, explorations, et cetera, et cetera. But if I want them to follow exact instructions, my exact instructions have got to be in such a fashion that they duplicate it. So going back to your original question, did the first book open the doorway for other books? And I said yes and no. Yes, because it was a success. People like the way that I communicate. No, until about 2002. 2001, my teacher, Remy Presses, died. I already had 2 earnest books written. But my senior junior ethic is that I do nothing to cut across his income line.
Yeah.
Nothing. And so they were sitting in the cooker. So I had 1 karate book and I had 2 more earnest books. Well, I just happened to be talking to another earnest player. And I said, I would like to find out about this internet book or this electronic book sort of thing. And she goes, I have a student. His name is Mish Handworker. Let's connect you guys. Now, you want to talk about opening the door. He showed me how to work in certain programs, how to create PDF files. And then this spilled over into video. And so now it's like the end game, if we talk about the end game, aside from making a few bucks on my works. Since I'm an American and I do American karate and I live in an American culture, I don't buy into I've established a style. This guy is my successor. When I quit, he's going to take over and continue the line. That's not Western think. That is not Western think. That's more Oriental think, cultures that are based on tradition and so forth. My legacy, my bodies of work. So you want to know how Super Dan thinks. Well, here's this book, this book, this book. You want to see how he moves. There's this video, that video. Do you have a question about thus and such? Well, he talks about timing in ding, 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 ding in a simplified fashion that anybody can get. Okay. Therein lies my legacy. And this is why I've done like 40, I think the count right now is 40 books. And since they're all print on demand, I don't have to worry about whether there is a seller's, there's a buyer's market for it. I don't have printing costs to cover, which I had in the first book, which is why I threw everything into the first book. And out of the 1,200 photos, they only used 750 because of space constraints. It was like, it was far more illustrated than what that book already is. And that book is very illustrated, but man, I had everything mapped out. So, that's my legacy and my research. It all has to do with answering questions. Does karate kata really have a purpose? I thought, well, let's get into this. And I found out actually it does. All these little static motions and this and that don't resemble free fighting, that don't resemble street fighting, they do play into the martial arts overall development. Yes, they can aid their street defense. Yes, they can aid their free fighting. You just have to look at it a certain way. And once I wrapped up that line of research, bang, another door opens and I'm off somewhere else researching something else. So I had an interview one time, Senfusi Hightower. He asked me a great question. He goes, "So Dan, so what question have you always wanted to be asked, but nobody ever asked you?" And I had a big smile on my face. I said, "Okay, the question is what keeps you going?" I said, "Okay, Dan, what keeps you going?" I said, "Research." That's where my whole heart and soul is now, research. So very long answer to your question about did American Freestyle Karate open up the door? Yeah, yes and no. But anyway.
All right. No, that's a great answer. And
Thanks.
just, backing up a little bit, now, what got you started in martial arts?
I was Anderson's little brother. My older brother, Don, was the biggest hoodlum in the school, and he was the toughest fighter and so forth. So I had a mouth on me. Why? Because you didn't mess with Anderson. So you don't pick on Anderson's little brother. So I had free reign to be a jerk. And then my brother got sent to reform school. Now, hardly anybody knows what reform school is these days, but it's basically underage prison. And once Don was sent to reform school, all bets were off. I shut up quick because I was the little guy, etc. So now we fast forward. I'm 13 years old, and I joined what's called the Civil Air Patrol. It was an auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force. We had uniforms, and we marched, and we studied, and we marched, and we cleaned, and we did more marching. And we did a ton of marching. But there was one guy who was a captain who did karate. Oh yeah, this is really cool stuff. Because all we had at the time, we didn't have Bruce Lee. All we had at that time was James Coburn, our man Flint. We had the judo chop, which landed on the shoulder. So this is incredible mystique, and we have karate in our town. Oh, so I asked my mother, "Can I do this free lesson?" So I go do the free lesson, and Lauren Christensen, he's the teacher. Now, when you've got a picture of Lauren Christensen as a green belt. Yes, is that long ago. And so the class that I show up to is this guy's class. Well, the beginner's class was already over and done. And Lauren, looking back on it, he had two options. Either channel W.C. Fields, "Go away, kid, you bother me," or pull somebody off to the side, "Here, teach this kid some basics." And he did the second. So he pulled over a guy by the name of Tony Leonetti. He was a blue belt. And Tony, he showed me the punch, and he showed me the high block and the down block and the front kick. And I ripped out my pants, and I was in pig heaven. This was the coolest thing ever. So for my 14th birthday, my mother decided, okay, I could do lessons. She thought it would be a 6-month venture, and in November it'll be 58 years. So there was the self-defense thing, and then I thought, oh, if I do karate, I'll be cool, because my older brother was cool. My older brother had girlfriends, and he necked and this, and of course I'm 14 years old. I'm a boy. I want to meet the girls. I want to be cool, and the cool never happened. The cool never happened, but it really gave me this just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful direction in life. And so I wouldn't change a thing. But that's how I got started. Yeah.
And that was your first style of karate. Did you study other styles of karate, or stuck with that one?
I stuck with that organization. The style of karate was called Kung Sudo. Now, that's for those who don't know, that's the Korean pronunciation of the Chinese ideograms, karate do. And, it's like Tong Sudo is the Korean pronunciation of karate do. But those ideograms are China hand way, Kong Sudo for the karate do, empty hand way. And what I didn't know until I picked up Kichin Funakoshi's Karate do Kyohan, the Oshima translation, was that we were doing Korean style Shotokan.
Yeah.
The katas were all the same. And it was like, really? I'm doing Shotokan karate, which is Korean style. Well, okay. So now here's the fascinating thing. The guy who was the head of the association, he got turned on to a school up in Seattle. I think it was 1964-ish. And of all things, it was Taki Kimura's Kung Fu School. Now, Taki was Bruce Lee's #1 man. And Taki, he was teaching Junfan Kung Fu, which was basically Bruce's variant of Wing Chun. So he goes up there and he trains, and about at my brown belt level, the style goes, and it takes a left turn. Before, we're like this. Now let's see it pull back to the camera. Now we're like this. Before we were block and hit. Now we're doing this all at the same time. And so, and he didn't have a name for it at that point in time. He just called it the new style. Then the chief of the association, he abandoned a lot of this type of stuff, the simultaneous block and hip. We did some sort of Mattis stuff and started really zeroing in on tournament fighting. And at that point in time, he gave it a Chinese name, Wu Yang Man, meaning formless gait. And the black belt class, which was known as the special class, was basically his testing ground for everything. And some of the stuff that he came up with at that point in time, and we're talking 1970, 1971-ish, was quite groundbreaking. Some of it was ridiculous beyond compare, but it was a testing ground. It was like, okay, we will throw this in today. How does this work? How does this not work? And stuff got ejected out of the mixing bowl until we had conceptually a decent tournament style. Now, anybody who knows anything about any kind of competition, it boils down to the individual, and inside the school, we had guys that would spank me like they were my daddy. They would just light me up. But for some reason, you get me in that ring, and I owned the place. And so I was the guy who was doing extremely well in competition. They did fine, but I became a national, and then regional, national champion, finally winning a world championship. And that was all part of the Dan thing. Now, in 1974, he and I engaged in some really infantile, and we had a very acrimonious split. And from that point in time, it was actually ended up being one of the best things for my own development, because now I had to go on my own. Now I had to do my own research instead of relying on the instructor. And so in the long run, it was a very good thing. At that time, it was, oh boy, this was uncomfortable period of my life. But from there, summer of 74 was when I started going off into the Dan area of research, finally coming up with just a title, American Freestyle Karate, because I wasn't an Oriental guy. And it combined and progressed from there. And then now in terms of any other styles, I'll give an interesting answer to you, because are you familiar with Kenji Toketsu?
Yeah. French,
Okay.
Japanese man, right in France. Yeah, I don't know if is he still around, because I haven't read a lot of French stuff anymore in a long time.
I really don't know. I love his translation of the Book of Five Rings. I've got a couple of other of his books, but he made a statement one time in a blog that I wish I could find, because I think some of the stuff's been not taken down by others, but maybe deleted by himself or whatever. But he had made the statement that he studied over 50 styles of karate. But then he makes the distinction of there's a difference between studying and training in. And he's making that distinction because he studied the similarities, the differences, the concepts of over 50 styles of karate. Well, he only trained in maybe 2 or 3. So when I looked at that, I was like, okay, yeah, I've done a lot of that. I have studied a lot of the principles of internal martial arts. I've studied other styles of karate, other styles of Filipino martial arts, Japanese, Okinawan, differences, similarities, history, etc. What I've trained in, okay, totally different, because I have 2 major arts that I've trained in. And the first one is karate, which started out as the Korean version of Shotokan, then going into an American style with a Chinese name, and then Filipino style modern arnis from Professor Remy Presses. And so those are my 2 cores. And then we've had a couple of things here and there. I had about a 9-month stint doing Baguazhang under Jerry Weldon, which was, it's one of those that I didn't train very long in it, but boy, did it really impact what I did. I mean, I found out a lot about structure, and I've never heard anybody else use this term, but structure during transition and alignment during transition. It's easy to go, I'm here, and then flop all over the place, and I'm here and here. So I've got great structure both, but all this wibble wobble while you're doing this, okay, man, you blew your structure mid transition, which is actually where all the action is. And
we call this a coordinated body movement in the Tai Chi Chuan style that we do. And the point is that whenever every movement you do, your entire body needs to be connected.
Yes. And that's something that I also got from everything that I've read in Tai Chi, but then the training, what I did with Jerry in Baguazhang, how the entire body is connected. And it's funny because I was teaching at a seminar. We were doing some sensitivity exercises, and it was an arnis camp. And I'm doing empty hand. We're doing sensitivity exercises, moving, shifting, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, one of the guys comes up during like an intermission and says, Dan, how long have you been studying Tai Chi? I said, I've never trained a day of Tai Chi in my life. But the principles are there. The principles are the same. It's just, this is so associated with Tai Chi that nobody ever thought that you could put this over to arnis or karate or whatever. So, but yeah, that's what I've trained in. But what I've studied, and especially, I'll do this and then I'll let you go on to the next question or whatever. There's a guy, and he's in LA now. His name is Tim Cartmel.
Yeah.
And he has a book, Effortless Body
Effortless Throws. Yeah. He's a really good guy. Interesting guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He's one of these guys that's done internal martial arts from a real deal aspect. He did internal martial arts, goes to Taiwan, gets in his first full contact fight, gets in there, rock and roll. Now he's down in LA teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. Okay. So what we don't have the guy who's been sitting on the couch, drinking coffee, reading books, and then spouting great wisdom. This guy's had his nose rubbed in it and has risen to the cream of the crop. He had a description, and this is going to be a misquote, but he had a description of internal martial arts. And his description of internal martial arts is using everything in your body in a coordinated action against the weakest points of the other person's body. And like I said, that's a horrible misquote. But when I look at
internal that way. And what you just said about coordinated body movement for your Tai Chi. And, you know, what I do in our NIS, it's like, yeah, this is to me the secret of the masters. And if an old master couldn't describe it, well, they could say, well, you know, I felt this kind of energy. And yeah, well, okay, you had good energy and you had good balance, and they had, you know, horrible structure and horrible balance. And yeah, that energy felt good. And then somebody takes the energy description and kind of goes, you know, if I meditate long enough, if I drink the right kind of coffee, blah, 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 blah. So anyway,
No,
my
that
my 2 cents on it. Yeah.
makes perfect sense. And here's a quick story from Kenji Tokitsu, because used to write in Karate Bushido, which is a French magazine. I don't know if they're still around. I read that religiously when I was a teenager. And I think it was one of his, it might have been Iaido, one of the Japanese sword fighting styles. His teacher had given him an exercise with a bokken, with a wooden sword. He had to hit, like, I think it was a rubber tire, like an overhand downward strike, and he had to do, like, I don't know, like 1,000 reps a day or something. And but he was living in France, I think, at the time, so he'd go see his teacher, train, and come back to Europe. And the teacher told him to do that and never mentioned it again. So for years he did that exercise, and eventually he's like, okay, you know, he's never asking about it anymore, so I'm gonna quit. The next time he visits his teacher, they're training, and his teacher stops and is like, "You've stopped doing the exercise, haven't you?" And he says, "Yes, sir." Okay, go back and start up again. And it fit into an explanation. One of the explanations was that the impeccable control that his teacher had with his sword had to do with that exercise. And one of the things that it teaches the exercise is to accelerate. You have to accelerate from the get-go. We could call it explosiveness, if you will.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have, they have high top speed, but they don't get there quickly. They take too long. I often give the image like, okay, it's like shooting an arrow. The full speed is delivered as soon as you let go, and then it starts slowing down. So you want to get as close to maximum speed as quickly as possible. And I said that his teacher then was able to do this extremely rapid sword technique and just stop it where it needed to stop, because he was slowing down right after he started, because he had that high acceleration, that top speed from the get-go, so he could slow down and stop his weapon, where most people didn't. They had to do a lot more work to eventually get to that top speed, and then they can't control it anymore, and the sword goes all over the place. And there was a great lesson in there that I remember from back in the day, from reading that. Was an article that he wrote, and that I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense for everything.
Now, let me put the layer of frosting on the top of the cake. And that is when I talk about timing, and I'll pull this all together with the Tokitsu story. When I talk about timing, I have a very simple definition of timing. Timing is a decision of when. When what? Well, when anything. And everybody naturally has good timing. You know, a very mundane, very day-to-day example of this is you go to the bathroom, the door is closed. Well, you don't walk up to the bathroom, stand still, and then reach to the door. Usually you're in mid-step, so that by the time you get there, you've grasped the handle. Okay, so your timing with your movement is just so you're there right at that point in time. Babies eating, okay. Perfect example of terrible timing. And then they get better. After a while, etc. Okay, decision of when. The two key errors in timing: too soon, too late. But what's the hidden error? Not prepared. You can have the best, back up here. You can have the best, let's say, back fist in the world, but if your hand is down and you draw up, okay, you just blew that exquisite timing by having to get ready to go. All right. The downward shot of the sword. Okay. What is or isn't ready? Are your elbows out? Okay. That's going to take away. Are your hands too tight when they should be actually firm but relaxed? And then when you go, okay, that's when you've got that explosiveness. But how many things erode at that initial explosiveness that if you had the proper mechanics, proper position, et cetera, and you utterly ready, you could just go. Anyway, frosting on the cake on that particular, from a Dan point of view.
Totally in agreement. Totally in agreement. I want to talk a little bit about the Eskrima, the Arnis that you've been doing. How did you get to that? Because that's, I mean, it's not okay, I'm going to rephrase that. My experience, and I am a bad example of that experience because I went a different path as well. But my experience is that many martial artists stay with either one style or they do a style that is either a complement or a different branch of the same style. Let's say people do 2, 3, maybe 4 different styles of karate, or they do karate and then judo, or karate and jiu-jitsu, or something else that is Japanese. They don't go immediately to, Pencak Silat, like, or Greco-Roman wrestling. They stick with what is close to what they already know. I did not. I did the opposite. I went all over the place and went to quote unquote opposites. But I think it's from an outside perspective. Before you start practicing Eskrima, it probably looks very different. Again, it's just starting off with the weapons. It's there's a vast difference there. So how did you get so enthusiastic about studying that and then dedicating so much time to it to get to the level you're at now?
Well, I've got another funny story for you. So there's a very good friend of mine, Fred King, who had a kung fu school at that time, and he was big on bringing this teacher in, that teacher in, that teacher in. He says, Danny, I got this weapons expert coming, and he's going to be doing a seminar. Says, yeah. Go away. Danny, I got this guy, the Qigong master. He says, no. I'm not interested. If it's not free fighting, I'm not interested. Danny, I got this guy, I got that guy. Well, and at that point, it's like, I'm a national champion. I've got blinders on in terms of free fighting. That's my thing. So we're in Oakland, California, and I'm rooming with Fred. And I'm going to slide into my thought pattern at the time because it makes a better story. So he's got this guy with him, this professor guy. And it's like, who is this guy? And I can't hardly understand him. He's talking about this, he's talking about that, and I can't follow him. He says the accent's very strong. I was like, yeah, go away. And the morning of the tournament, 6 in the morning, I'm hearing this. And I had some beer the night before. I pulled the covers up. It was kind of squinting. It's like, what the hell? And these guys are doing this empty-handed trapping hands thing back and forth. Guys, come on. It's 6 in the morning. Pull the covers back over my head. The noise stops. An hour later, I hear from the distance, clack, 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 clack. These guys are out in the parking lot doing the Sinawali stick weaving drills. I'm thinking, oh, geez Louise, give me a break. Okay, so we do the daytime event of the tournament. I'm seated in the finals, so I don't even fight during the day. And we come back, and this little professor guy is still with us. It's like, what the? Now he's talking to me. Oh my God. And he's talking about how these guys tried to jump him in the subway in New York. And he's like, Danny, grab my hand. I don't know if physically I rolled up my eyes. Spiritually, I rolled up my eyes. I was looking for a rafter and a rope. Hang me now. Because This is driving me nuts. So I grabbed his wrist. And the next moment changed it. He did this simple walk away move and released the grip, right? Now, I was a national champion. I have seen all kinds of confidence. I've seen Joe Louis with his little menacing thing, psych everybody out. I've seen Jeff Smith walk into an arena and own the entire place. And I've seen blustery people, and I've seen people who faked confidence, etc. When he did this, I got the feeling that it never crossed his mind that it wouldn't work. And it's like, this is a bit beyond confidence. Hold on here. And my head spun like that. My first thought was, I gotta watch this guy. Meaning I have to observe. I have to, so probably 4 months, 3-4 months later, he had a 2-day seminar. And I went to the 2-day seminar. And anybody who's done modern harness with Professor Remy knows how he was the king of the seminar. He knew how to run things. He knew how to really engage people. And he also knew how to show how his art would go like zip with your art. And just like my first lesson that I showed up too late, bam, I dove off the high diving board. This was the same thing, dove off the high diving board. And the thing about it was, timing wise, it was brilliant because I was coming to the end of my interest in tournament karate. And I've always had a tremendous interest in martial arts, but all I ever knew was kick and punch. In the karate style that we did we do any throws? No. Did we do any joint locks? No. Did we do any self-defense? No. Did we do any knife and club defense? No. Did we do multiple attacker defense? No. It was a tournament style. And so when I started learning from Professor Remy, I saw that I had a small wedge of the pie, and he opened up the rest of the world of martial arts to me. And so it was because of him and his teaching that transformed me from being a karate boy to a martial artist. And so one of the things that I loved about it, and I love to this day, is Filipino martial arts is based on the flow. All you have to do, if one wants to think of a flow, is just take a video of a Yang Tai Chi player, okay? Speed it up, maybe 2 to 3 times speed, and you'll see this continuity of action, this motion that's not stop action, not with the kime, but you think it's a zzz, et cetera. And we were joking about relative ages before we came on. One of the things about harness is it has kept my body fluid. It has actually been not quite fountain of youth, because I feel the aches and the pains and the soreness in the morning. Oh boy, do I need that coffee in the morning. But when I look at other people who are almost 72 years old, in or out of the martial arts, it's like, well, this artist thing must be pretty good. And then it also, because of the manner in which Professor Remy taught, it opened up that door to more research. How can I explain what he did so effortlessly? Okay, this is going to take some study. And then how do I describe it in such a fashion that one can replicate the ease with which he moved, not replicate the body action, okay? Because we all have different size bodies, we all have different size emphasis and stress points, etc. But to replicate the ease of application. So this also opened up this marvelous area of research that I'm still fascinated by. But that's how I got into modern harness. And
how has it influenced my karate? I think it smoothed me out a bit. I mean, I was pretty smooth to begin with, but this definitely smoothed me out even more. But it's kept the body supple. It's kept the body, to where, do I have shoulder injuries? No. Do I have elbow injuries? No. Do I have hip injuries? No. I do have bone on one thumb, and I do have a hip replacement, but in the grand scheme of things, it has really helped to preserve the body via its motion. So
And
that's how I got into it.
All right. Did you find that your karate influenced the arnis and vice versa? Or do you keep them separate?
Well, okay. When I teach and train them, and this is a really good question because I've got another multiple and long answer here. First, how the karate influenced my modern arnis was that I had already been doing karate for 14 years. I was a defensive fighter, so my observational skills were already honed. During that particular point in time in the evolution of karate competition, one had to develop left side and right side to gain an edge on everybody. You had to be able to develop all the different types of kicks. So you couldn't only be, let's say, a round kicker, because if they shut down your round kick, okay, you need to have that side kick, or you need to have that right hand or that left hand. So it taught me to be a well-rounded, for lack of a better term, well-rounded application athlete. So that when I got to arnis, I already knew how to move my body. I already knew how to recognize what Professor Remy was doing. It was just replicating the moves, and then, of course, drill, so that I got them down. So in that fashion, the karate greatly helped. And it aided me in absorbing. And the fascinating thing is, let's say if I was a Shotokan practitioner, or a Taekwondo practitioner, or an Okinawan Goju-Ryu practitioner, would that have helped? I don't think so. I think that would have put boundaries on it. But American karate person, which didn't have these type of stylistic limitations, that aided. Now, did the arnis influence my karate? It influenced how Dan moves. Did it influence the curriculum? No, not really. There are certain joint locks and throws that I now add in because they were taught to me in modern arnis. Is there a blend between the two? No. My branch, my form of what Professor Remy taught is its own standalone, if you want to use that word. It's its own group, it's its own system. And I don't go, well, here are kicks and punches from karate, because the fascinating thing is Professor Remy already had them in there. He was a karate guy, he was a judo guy, he was a wrestler, besides being a stick guy. So he already had that in the works. And same thing with throwing and joint locking, etc. So influencing my karate, going back to that, it smoothed me out even more in application than what I had already been doing. So, but is it part of the curriculum? No. Is the karate part of the arnis curriculum? No. Those I keep apart.
All right. Now, and obviously, because you've been training in both karate and arnis then for such a long time, when you look at it right now, not necessarily when you started, but like right now, do you think like the two systems, the two styles, they kind of work well together? Or are there any components that you feel like they're incompatible? And just to be clear, pretty much every single question I just asked was from one of my patrons, Eric, who had a list. So we will head on over to the Patreon part later.
Okay.
For the audience.
Okay.
For the second part, we'll do that later. But these were all the questions that I was going to ask anyway.
Fair enough.
So,
well,
what's your thoughts?
I'll say, for me,
Yeah.
they blend like nobody's business, because if you're doing stick, what do you do if the stick is in your hand? Well, if you do, let's say the brush and the grab and the hit. Oh, wait a minute. Was that a back fist that I just did? Push, grab. Oh my goodness. I do the backhand parry. I slap down. Wait, that was straight punch. So I think they blend beautifully. And a combination of the two, and this is something that I really stress to my guys, both karate wise and arnis wise. So there are several things going on here. One is what I teach you. Okay. Now, the second thing is what I do. If I do something different than what I teach you, don't worry about it. This is what Dan's doing. You do what I say, don't do what I do. And then also, then there's the third thing. There's what Dan's researching. Now, what Dan's researching may find itself in the curriculum, may not. At this juncture, what is specifically arnis, what is specifically karate in my application? That's Dan doing his shit. It's Dan doing his thing. And one can roll back and go, oh, well, that particular would, did that come from arnis? Well, yeah, actually it did. In fact, here's a great story that is an example of it. Lifelong buddy, good pal, Mike Shintaku. I don't know, about 10 years ago, he's heading down to Southern Oregon for a summer camp for his association. He stops by. Dan, you want to train? Yeah, I want to train. So we get out there and we're sparring, and we're doing karate sparring. And we are in an exchange, and our arms get tangled up, and I trap him and I hit him. And he looks at me, he goes, oh, so that must be coming from your arnis training, right? And I give him a little sly smile and go, well, here's the thing. It came out of the toolbox. I didn't plan it. Our arms got trapped, and all of a sudden, I hit him. And I never told him that it was as big a surprise to me as it was to him, because I most certainly didn't plan it. I most certainly didn't drill it. But this is where the Dan art encompasses, okay, we've got the karate, we've got the arnis, we've got what little I've done in Bagua. It all goes like that. So, Eric, that's my opinion, clearly stated as such. For me, it works brilliantly put together.
Well, it's also something that is sometimes hard for students to understand. Like you explained that okay, I'm doing something here that may or may not be applicable to what you're doing here right now, but students are always watching. No matter what, they're always watching. Even when you tell them explicitly, do this, what I'm showing you right here, you turn around, you do something else, and they're just copying you. Or I'm not going to say what's even worse, but it is a factor, is that they remember it, and then when they leave class, they go practice what you were doing, and they come back and they try it, which is not wrong per se, but then you have to explain things like, okay, maybe not right now, which is very frustrating to hear as a student. But I'm a very strong believer as I got older in having a structured approach, having a curriculum, and what I call teaching priority, meaning what do you teach, when, and why? Not what is in the curriculum, but what comes first and why, and what does it set up, and so on, so that you don't waste time. I did this with the basic self-defense system that I teach, which is basic self-defense, as the name says. And it's not necessarily the best or the whatever, like, you see in all the ads in the magazines and online. That was never the purpose. The purpose was to have something that is versatile, very versatile, and that you can learn quickly. Now, it could be more simple. I could simplify it even more so you learn quicker, but it would be less versatile. So there's this sweet spot somewhere where, like, okay, we don't want to have too many techniques, but we don't want to have too few either. So it needs to be balanced. And then every single exercise that I make students do, and that is in the instructional video as well, is done in such a priority that it always sets up what comes later. So you even the warm up is extremely specific. Why? Because it sets up what comes later. The goal is that you've never done anything in your life, and you start training, and you just don't lose time. We don't waste time. So I'm a huge fan of being like we talked about in your book, like being clear in your
Yeah.
in your instruction, and giving information,
Yeah.
and then structuring it in such a way so that they get it. And hopefully, like Mr. Miyagi says, there's no such thing as a bad student, because teacher says student does, but that's not how it works in real life. But if a
Well,
student,
that's the Karate Kid. Yeah, I mean, you can say anything in the Karate Kid, and it sounds great. But yeah, laying a foundation,
yeah,
and you build a house, you got to put the foundation there. I mean,
yeah.
simple, logical thought. And if you don't lay the foundation, okay, they're going to go this way, they're going to go that way, and like that. So yeah, I'm in total agreement with you.
For me, it's because I've studied several different systems, and still do. I try to keep them separate, because I'm on the receiving end of something sometimes in certain styles that is extremely I wouldn't even call it regulated. It's like, this is what you do first, then that, then that. Like, for instance, Bob Orlando used to have like this huge folder, that file folder that he'd have with him, with all his handouts, with all his lesson plans. He would put his lesson plans online, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. This is what we're going to do: 5 minutes of this, 10 minutes of that, and so on. And he had a schedule for the entire season, basically the entire year. And it was always changing, but it was always very meticulously planned. So you couldn't just, me as a student, couldn't just introduce stuff in there, because Bob was going somewhere, and you have, if you want to learn, tag along. Don't go off into a different direction. And then there's other styles where it's a lot easier to just integrate other stuff, because that is an inherent part of the system, is that it is open to outside influence, and it encourages you to basically just do your own thing with it as well. So I always find it interesting to talk to people who have, like you have, different, a lot of experiences in different systems, that, like I said in the beginning, are not from the same country or same culture, that have a vastly different set of training methods. Like, for instance, the angle system that you see in Filipino martial arts is very specific to it. You don't necessarily find in Japanese or Chinese arts.
No, not at all.
It's in there, but not in that systematic way. Yes, they have angle 1 and 2 and 3 and so on, but it's not explained as such, the training methodology. So all that to ask you this. So coming from a karate background, and then you start with Professor Presas, and I'm assuming that very early on it was like learning the angle system. That must have been like mind-blowing, quote unquote, to you, if you're like, okay, this is a totally different method of learning things. How was that experience?
Well, it was good, because the thing is that you grow up in a karate system, and everything is very specific, which means that that's the hammer fist strike, but that's the knife hand strike, that's the hook punch, that's the ridge hand. Well, wait a minute, aren't they all in a circle coming this way? Yeah. So it simplified things. That was a number one. Oh, okay. Number two, back hammer, back fist, back chop, back rake. No. Backhand, head area, number two. So it was brilliant in its simplicity. So I liked that. Now, one of the things that my previous karate instructor was trying to get across to us was, okay, directional hitting. But it was so much like that in terms of free fighting that it just didn't make sense. Okay, with the weapon, it made a lot of sense. So for me, it made it very, very easy. And the fascinating thing is that now, when we look a little bit further down the line, it was all motion based. So it's not like technique based. It's okay, you got this particular direction of motion, that direction of motion, that direction of motion, etc. And all these different techniques, well, they involved a particular motion. And then when you combine all of them, you had an aspect of the flow. And yeah, certain motions had certain names. Okay. The upwards X like this. Okay. The figure 8. Okay, good. The side by side, bande banda, literal translation, side by side. But again, they were all motions. And so getting out of the this is thus and such technique into, well, here's a term for a motion, but are you doing a knife hand strike? Are you hitting with the stick? Do you have a blade in your hand? Oh, so bande banda. The old man, a lot, he'd say this a lot, Danny, it is all the same. It's like, sir, no, you're hitting with a stick here, you're cutting with a knife, and you're hitting, Danny, it's okay. It is all the same. And as it turns out, well, yeah, it is all the same. It's just, my right side to my left side, and we have a certain height. Okay, good. It's just, it's all the same. So that's something that was very liberating, very liberating.
Well, when we get to the bonus part on Patreon, I'm gonna not push back a little bit on that, but
Sure.
kind of pick your brain on that a little bit more, because I have some questions, as they say, and I wouldn't say I don't think I'll disagree with you. I think we'll dig into the nuance more, but I want to save that for now. Just because we're hitting about the 1 hour mark, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
What's next for you? What are you focusing on right now?
What I've been doing over the last 6 months, every martial art has what I call a shopping list. You have this list, and you've got this, and every belt is a shopping list that's supposed to go to an end goal. You've got an end point. So all your combinations, all your defenses, all your stances, all your this and that goes to this end point that after you've learned, let's say 20 combinations, and you've learned your approaches to free fighting, and you've learned your core principles, etc., you should arrive here. What I've been doing lately is relatively radical, which is I've thrown off the shopping lists for both arnis and karate. And it's like, if this is where you're supposed to end up, why don't I start teaching that now? Okay. So now when I put that together with the concept of, okay, what does a Shodan need? Not what is cool that the Shodan knows, but what do they need? Oh, that's kind of interesting. Well, what does a Shodan need? Does a Shodan really honestly need a spinning hook kick to the head? Well, not if you're 69 years old. Okay. So when I look at what does a Shodan need, I look at what do I feel a Shodan needs? Okay. Structure, timing, good distancing, basic street skills, really basic how to stay out of situations so you don't need the street skills, and so forth. And it actually pares down to this small core. So what I've been doing is I've yanked the rug out of all of my adults and go, okay, if I want first grade black, this is what is needed and wanted. This is where we're heading right now. And I don't care what belt level you are. This is where we're heading. And what's amazing is it's really coming together beautifully. The same way with arnis. One of the things I tell my guys, and anybody else who will listen, is that, in my opinion, 97% of modern of any kind of arnis is what I call cool shit. 3% is combat. Okay. Let's let's dial in on the 3%. And once you get black, okay, let's do all the cool stuff. Let's do all the, but let's get that basic grounding. And in that basic grounding, the primary thing you have to have is you have to have the flow. If you don't have the flow, you don't have Filipino martial arts. That's all there is to it. So let's get the flow in from day one. So I've changed how I teach harness from the standard modern harness template. We have the 12 basic strikes. We have the 12 basic defenses. We have the block and hit back, blah, 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 to 4 modules. They're all template based, so that instead of against strike number 1, you have to do defense number 1. It's like, okay, well, if you have a type of motion that you're working on, ding, 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 pop. Good. Where does that fit into your defense? What's over here? Well, oh, I guess I'm over here, etc. And that is working brilliantly. So once I get the experimentation of all that down, of course, I'll put it into either a book or a video or something like that. But that's what I'm doing. That's where I'm heading. You know, who knows where I'll go in terms of dojo teaching, you know, because I mean, I've been teaching since 1969. That's what, is that 55 years? Is that the right math?
I suck at math.
Oh, okay. Well, when were you born?
72.
72.
So I'm 52.
Okay. Yeah, see, 72. I've been teaching since 69, so I've been teaching martial arts longer than you've been alive.
Yep.
It's like, well, okay. So I love seminar teaching. I love teaching groups who I didn't raise because I absolutely adore the challenge. But you know, I've got to take a look at, you know, the day-to-day, that sort of thing. So who knows where I'll go with that. So, but right now, it's really what we'd say in the States is getting down to brass tacks on what is needed in the karate, what is needed in the harness. And it's a combination research project, which is coming off beautifully. And it's benefiting students because now it's not just my research project. They get the immediate benefit of it. So, yeah, aside from that, I've got 2 or 3 videos that are in the back of my mind. I've got a book that I've been dodging for probably about 6 months, which means I got to get back to work on that. And yeah, and then we've got a seminar that's coming up, a camp that's coming up in 2025 in Connecticut, which is Remy Press's legacy camp, which is probably the best spirited camp that I've ever seen outside of anything taught by Professor Remy. All the instructors are top flight. Everybody's there for the same reason. You know, kind of one of those where, you know, the advertising, you know, all egos left at the door. Well, all the egos were left at the door for both of these. And it was just,
Nice.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then I get to video it. So I've got all the footage of all the instructors. So anyway, the future's bright. So that's, and I'm looking to staying above the grass for quite some time again.
All right. So I'm going to head on over to the bonus section on Patreon.
Okay.
The links will be in the show notes. But before we go to that, there's a final question I'll ask, and it needs a bit of a setup. So it's at least 25 years ago. I was still married back then, and me and my ex-wife were at it was kind of like a fundraiser for a martial arts school that I was very friendly with one of the instructors, and it was a big training hall with lots of tables. There was a DJ playing, and nobody was dancing. So the wife of the instructor comes over and she's talking to us, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? There's nobody on the dance floor, this and that. And she says, well, why don't you go dancing? And I thought, okay, if you play disco music, I'll go dance. And and she says, well, alrighty then. So 5 minutes later, they start doing disco dancing, disco music, and I'm like, I'm on. So I'm in this big training hall with, I don't know, maybe like close to 100 people maybe, and I go to the dance floor and I just start doing my John Travolta stuff, having a blast, not caring about everybody watching. Like, what is that crazy guy doing? My wife, my ex-wife, she was like probably like okay, he's doing that thing again. The wife of my friend, she was cracking up. Everybody was cracking up, and I was having a blast.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you that story to tell you this story. So obviously, you know, Lauren Christensen is my mentor, and it's thanks to him that I was writing. And in many ways,
Yeah.
One of the main reasons why we are talking here, because he always spoke very, very highly of you. So and it's my error that I didn't get us talking sooner. But one of the things Daron asked me once is like what do you do for fun? What do you do for fun? And he mentioned his thing. I'm not going to mention it because, you know, that's
Yeah.
his story to tell. And I mentioned, look, okay, disco dancing. I just like an idiot. I'll be in my house dancing like a fool to whatever tune that is popping into my head. Used to be the Bee
Okay.
Gees, not so much anymore. So then, what do you do for fun?
I've just recently started learning how to play what's called a touch guitar. And if you look at progressive rock, you look at Tony Levin or you look at Trey Gunn, it is what most people think of touch guitars like when Eddie Van Halen would tap, and he would have this. He'd be fingering, then he'd take his either finger or pick, and he'd be going ding 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 ding. Well, a touch style guitar, you have 8, 10, 12 strings, and you have your hands like this, and you're playing, etc. And right now, that is my new passion. And I'm a white belt at it. And I really hate being a white belt. I just absolutely hate it. But it's something that I've always wanted to. I mean, I love music. I absolutely adore music. I'm a music snob, so love jazz. I love 1969 through about 1975, 76 is progressive rock and jazz rock before it became jazz fusion. I love acoustic guitar music. I love acoustic piano, and I just it's one of those areas that, along with reading, I adore reading. I don't have enough time to read, but I love reading. But I always wanted to play, but I was always doing martial arts. And finally, last Christmas, because I had talked about wanting to do touch guitar, and Marie, my wife, was saying, well, so what do you want for Christmas? And I said, well, what price range are we looking at? Because if it's $100, I want this. If it's $300, I want this. If it's $400, I want this. And I listed out, well, I would like this or this or this or this. And she said, well, what about that guitar you've been talking about? It's like, oh, she goes, yeah, what about the guitar? And so I went ahead and ordered it. And it's really funny because the three major producers of this type of guitar are expensive. A Chapman stick, $2,500, $3,000. A War guitar made by Mark War, $3,000. A touch guitar by Marcus Reuter, again, $3,000. But there's this guy, I think he's in North Carolina, this old hippie, and he's got this company that he does, and he calls it Crappy Guitars, spelled with a K. And he hand builds. So on his website, there is all these different models, and you can tag with him. Well, I want it constructed this in such a way, blah, blah, blah. And that was for $850. And it's like, okay, $850. I spent more than that on a bad car. So if I tank on this, okay, I'm not out that much money. And so I'm about 5 months into it, and I haven't tanked, and I'm having a ball with it. I'm not ready for any kind of public viewing whatsoever. But that's what I do for fun. I like working on that and learning by ear how certain songs go, and I'll just diddle around with that. So yeah,
Nice.
then the rest of it. I mean, I'm a funny sort of guy because some of my work is actually a lot of fun. I love writing. I love video production. So I would also rate those as fun, but those are martial arts things. This is a totally non-martial arts venture. And so that's what I would say there. Yeah.
Nice. Well, Brian May of Queen, his first guitar was made by his dad, and I think they used part of an old table or something to make the guitar. So he ended up okay. So Dan,
he did well by
he did
himself.
reasonably well. So you never know where this is going to lead.
Yeah, well, I think he's one of the richest rock stars actually out there.
He's an amazing guy. He's an astrophysicist. He's like brilliant, and I think he published a thesis a few years ago or something. I forget, but he's like rocket scientist level smart. Very, very strange. Well worth looking into. I mean, he's got a lot of talks that you can find on YouTube about this, and where he talks about it, and then seems to be a very humble guy as well. He recently I saw one where
I've seen a few things with Brian May, and he seems like a real down to earth guy.
Yeah. There was this young lady who asked him, like, okay, what's it like to be like a legend, basically, and he's like, you're very kind. He says, but obviously living the rock star life is freaking awesome. But he says that there's a part of me inside that's looking at this like what is all this stuff that's going on? Like I'm still me is kind of his message, and I really like that.
Yeah.
All right, now this time we're definitely going to head over to the Patreon part. Dan,
okay.
Where can people reach you? I'll put all the links in the show notes so that people can click on it.
There's and I answer any inquiry, but the easiest ways are either my email address, which is Danny DANNY Lee LEE Anderson ANDERSON @hotmail.com. That's the easiest one. I've got a couple of websites, probably, but I can't remember if people could tag with me through those or not. There's certain areas I'm a geek and certain areas I'm not. So I would say that is probably the easiest one. And
is it Super Dan Online Academy? Because that's
Super Dan Online Library is my book and website.
Okay.
One. And then the Academy, I will use that some, but not much. That was more of not a totally failed experiment, but one of my less successful ones. But the library, the library is a good one. And,
so that's Super Dan Library. That's the one. Super
Dan Online Library.
Okay.
And that would be www.superdanonline. Yeah.
Okay, I found it. All right, I'll put all the links in the show notes for the audience so that they can check that out. All right, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
You betcha.
And folks, for everybody listening, visit the websites that Dan just mentioned, and we're going to head on over to Patreon where we're going to talk some more and have a good time. The link to that will also be in the show notes, so it'd be great if you join us there as well. And in the meantime, everybody, take care and bye-bye.
See you there.